All right, my name is Andre Diaz. I'm first generation American. My parents emigrated to the States in the early 60s. My dad is from the Dominican Republic. My mom is from Cuba. I self identify as an Afro-Latino. Um, Grew up in New York, came to West Michigan in the early 70s, and have made it home. And I'm married, have three children who are married, and four beautiful grandchildren. So we have this whole thing where people are saying there's hey, there's problems in our country, there's problems in our country. People are not really listening. Everybody's busy working, right? People are trying to get their two cars in the garage, their boat, their nice home. They're trying to have a fat checking account, and so if they're doing well, they're not really paying attention to people who aren't doing well. Most people aren't, right? And if I go into a store, or if I get pulled over by a police officer and the exchange is pleasant, if I if I put in for a job and I get the job, if I go for a promotion and I get the promotion, if I go into a bank and I'm able to get a loan at a low interest rate, my kids are going to a really good school. Well, then for me, everything around everything's fine. And there's a few people who are complaining, but if they would just work harder, if they just really put effort into it and quit complaining, they'd have the same exact opportunities as I do, not realizing that implicit bias is real, that there's an unconscious mind that is working, right? Like if I drive to work every single day, and we've all done it, we drive to work, and sometimes we're on the phone and we don't realize it, and we get to work and we're like, how did I even get here? I've been driving and I haven't paid attention the last 15 minutes. That's because our unconscious mind is working, and so that happens with lots of folks, right? And so when I have my biases in my mind, right, things then begin to happen that are disproportionately not fair to people of color. But if I'm living in a world where everything is in my favor, I don't realize that. So then Corona happens, right? And everything is shut right down. People are stuck in their houses, right? And so there's two things that I find very interesting about Corona before the Ahmaud Arbery um, and George Floyd killing is that in places where people have lived their whole lives and they've never been told that they can't do something, right? So black and brown people get told every day, you can't do this, or you shouldn't be in this location, or you shouldn't do that, or we have to change the way we talk, the way we act, like we can't even be loud in a restaurant, right? So I'll give you an example. I was at Ruth Chris Steakhouse with my family. Something funny happened at the table. I started laughing. I have a very gregarious laugh. So I started laughing, laughing. And my son's like, Dad, right? Because he doesn't want to call attention to the table because we carry this thing where we know that then people they can't even eat out. But two tables over, there's a group of white people at the table, and they're laughing two times louder than what we were laughing. But that's okay because they'll never be viewed as like not everything that they do is right,
Right.
and they're not and they do belong there, right? There is an unconscious bias that there's spaces that people belong, and spaces where people are welcome, people are not. So anyway, um, so everything is quiet. People are home. They're forced to be home. They can't go fishing. They can't take all these things that happen. So what do? They go grab their guns and they run to the state capitol, right? In a show of force, saying, "Listen, you can't tell us that we can't do what we want to do," and they're losing their minds. Why? Because people who are in power have never been told that they can't do something. So you have white people who've grown up their whole life never ever being limited in any fashion, and all of a sudden they're told that they can't do something, and they lose their everlasting minds. Now, black and brown people were just like, "I have to stay home. Okay, I'll stay home. I can't. I will have to wear a mask. I'll wear a mask. Whatever you want me to do, because we're used to conforming, right? Because we have to survive. But white people don't have to conform. And so when they're told that they can't do something, they lose their everlasting mind. And when I say they, I mean every white person, but for sure a lot of white people, a majority of white people, right? And so that show of force happens, and we're just like, oh, that's just. I mean, we are used to it, right? They kind of control the world, and they can do that, and okay. So then we have the very unfortunate events that happen with like Ahmaud Arbery, and that video starts to circulate. The whole country starts to see that, and then all of a sudden people start, because there is no distraction again because of the pandemic, because of Corona. People are faced with the reality of, listen, that was wrong, and so then people begin to call for action, right? And then very terrible George Floyd killing happens, and the country just erupts, and not because look, that wasn't the first time that we've seen it, but it's the first. I think two things. One thing is the amount of silent time, the amount of listen, the amount of time and personal stress that every person who has watched that video felt, regardless of regardless of anything, caused people to say something has to change, right? And so people were at their wits end, and there's no distractions. So people then were forced, right? Not forced, but their own, like everything in their guts forced them to have to say, look, we have things have to change. Things for sure have to change. And then they start to realize, look, this is horrible, that's horrible, that's horrible. And so all of a sudden they have the litany of things that they've lived their whole life, and they're saying, look, all of these injustices are horrible. George Floyd is the catalyst to cause us to action, to come to action, and things have to change, right? People begin to protest. And look, for sure, um, the folks who don't want to lose power and control began to get very, very nervous. But then they got very excited when things started to when there was damage to property, right? So they get very excited because then they can say, look, these are just more bad people. And this is why we have police. This is why police have to use strong arms. This is why these things happen. And so they then begin to shift the story, saying these are terrible people. Even the guy who leads our country, I won't even call his name, right? When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Like just throwing fuel and dog whistling again to a whole group of people who we thought had been sleeping.
So who are the people trying to make a difference right now in this moment in history?
Who are the people trying to make
Who
a
are
difference?
the people? What are they doing? Are
So
you part
so
of
here's
those organizations?
yeah. So here are things that are happening. I think that social media, for as twisted and convoluted as social media is, because it has allowed people to become what I call these keyboard kings, right? You can be really super tough guy on the keyboard and say all kinds of things. It has allowed a voice for people who perhaps haven't known how to share a voice, and so people have been using it to educate others, right? So sharing all kinds of data, sharing. Well, I'm huge on data because it can't be refuted, right? Like I can say I feel bad, but if you take my temperature, it's 98 degrees, it's 105, then you know I have a fever. So I can say I don't feel good 100 times, but that's just what I feel. But if I give you data, you can't fight. Here's what I would say. First, I would say that I've talked to people who are much older than me, and they say, listen, I've lived through this once before. Nothing's going is going to change, right? And I've talked to some people who are way younger than me, and they say, yeah, I don't think anything's going to change. This is just people don't have anything to do, so they're protesting. But I would say this to you: never in the history of law enforcement have four police officers, been arrested and charged with charges for killing a black and brown person as quickly as what happened in Minneapolis, right? In San Francisco, in just 2 weeks worth of protesting, the mayor there said that her police department would no longer respond to non-criminal calls. So people, all the Karens that are out there who love to call the police because a black or brown person is barbecuing, because a black or brown person is walking their dog or bird watching, they're not going to send police out to respond to those kinds of calls, right? In Louisville, they have banned the no knock warrants, right? So we have not seen that kind of quick change in the past 50 years, right? It took the civil rights leaders years to get things to happen, right? And so we're seeing, with national pressure, worldwide pressure, really, because people around the world, in Jerusalem, for goodness sakes, they are protesting the police brutality and treatment of black and brown people, right? So the whole world's putting pressure on this country, and so we can call our listen. This is what you can do in your local little city, your town, or village that you live in this country. 10 million children go to the school with no social worker in that school, but there's an armed police officer in that building. So just think about that for a minute. There's a police officer there to handle a situation that a social worker who's trained to should be doing now, who's gone to school for 6 years, college for, versus a police officer who went through a 21 or 12-month program, whatever the program might be. So you can call your local school board and say, hey, what are we doing to get social workers put in the school? Can we take the $65,000, $70,000, $80,000 that you're spending to have a school officer replaced with a social worker, with a psychologist, right? There's children who are being so you can call locally, you can call your school, and have your friends, and you can educate your neighbors, your cousins, and they can all make a movement just at a school level, right, to protect children, right, to provide services for kids so that they can then be able to grow up to their fullest potential, right. You can call your mayor, you can call your commissioner, depending on what kind of a city government system you live in, and you can say, listen, I don't want my police militarized, and I don't want my tax dollars, because they're your dollars, right? Those police are your employees. They don't often realize it, but they work for you. You can say, I don't want these types of things happening in my community, and so you can put pressure on your commissioner and on your mayor. And if they're not listening, then you have the biggest bat called a ballot, right? You have to vote. Yeah, and if we don't vote, then we don't have a voice, right? Those commissioners get put there not because they bought that seat, not because a king appointed them. It's because people went to the ballot. And now in Michigan, you don't even have to go to a ballot box. You can do it from the comfort of your own dining room table. Use a ballot form and mail it in. So people have to vote to make a difference. So you can call, you can write letters, you can send emails, you can go to your city commission meetings, right? Every citizen has an opportunity. If you pre-register, you get 3 or 2 minutes to speak to the mayor and to the commissioners and let them know that what's happening isn't right. That we have to change the way we are. That number one, we have to stop over policing. We don't need to militarize our police in our cities. And we need more community professional support, which is mental health, social workers, those kinds of people responding to calls where people are calling and saying, I have this issue, which is not a criminal issue, right? That which then would result in less, crime against black and brown people by uniformed police officers.